London's first park in the sky is in the making. Inspired by New York's High Line, it's designed by the same architect. NTD's Neil Woodrow has a special tour with the CEO of the project.
The Camden High Line will join other similar schemes dotted around the globe, such as the Promenade Plantée, the 3-mile-long elevated linear park in Paris, and the well-known New York High Line. I met with the CEO of the Camden High Line project, Simon Pitt-Keithley, who is working on regenerating the area.
An academic at UCL, the college, came up with a plan for 10 different sites in London that could become a High Line. And we saw that and we thought, wow, that's amazing. Let's do that.
The High Line route will extend for 3/4 of a mile from Camden Town to King's Cross. They launched an international competition to find the right designer. There were 75 submissions. 5 were shortlisted and each received £10,000 to go away and come back with their ideas. The winner was James Corner Field Operations. James Corner is the very same man who led the team to design the High Line in New York. We caught up with James at that very place and he told us more about this work.
Well, these kinds of projects, they're, in a sense, they're abandoned infrastructure. They all used to be actively working with rail lines, with trains. So what you're seeing now used to have massive freight trains running up and down it.
In comparison, the Camden area is more residential, low-rise, and still has an active train running one side of the High Line structure.
So I think in Camden we like the idea that we can bring people up the stairs and onto this structure and have a real surprise that there's this amount of greenery, there's bird song, there are flowers, and a profound sense of nature.
He says at the same time they will develop the space with a sense of community, so people might grow food, tend to gardening, create art or cultural events.
So I think we're looking to create something very green and natural, but also something very culturally dynamic that is authentic to the people and the place of Camden.
Back in Camden, Simon took us on a meandering walking tour at ground level of the route that will one day be a straight point-to-point stroll. The westernmost point will be Camden Gardens and from there an interchange with Camden Market. Then on to Prowse Place. The whole project should cost around £35 million.
And what you can see behind me is one of the longest brick tunnels in Europe. And up there, you can see the overgrown stuff that is in the place where the High Line's going to be. So it's all kind of disused, and we're going to turn it into something amazing.
The whole project should cost around £35 million.
So we've got the £750,000 that's going to get us through design and planning. We're now looking to raise about another 12-ish million to build the first section once we've got through planning in about 18 months.
The local council and the Mayor of London have given their support and 1,000 people have made donations. James Corner Field Operations have started on the design and consultations. They will submit their vision for this project to the local planning around Christmas. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Camden in London.
New York City is set to fully reopen this summer. Mayor Bill de Blasio says the city's increase in vaccinations and its decrease in virus cases helped it to turn a corner. NTD's Jason Perry tells us more.
All New York City businesses, including restaurants, bars, theaters, and even stadiums, can begin operating at full capacity on July 1st. With over 6 million vaccinations to date and virus cases the lowest since the holiday surge, Mayor de Blasio credited New Yorkers for being able to open the city back up.
You've done so much to fight through this crisis. Now we can see that light at the end of the tunnel.
Mayor de Blasio says he believes at least 400,000 jobs will come back to the city by the end of the year. He appointed restaurateur Danny Meyer as the new chairman of the NYC Economic Development Corporation Board.
One of my hopes was that the city can be an agent to help connect job seekers with those who want to hire because we are in for one of the biggest recoveries ever.
The announcement to fully reopen New York City comes the day after Governor Andrew Cuomo announced the state will lift the midnight curfew for bars and restaurants. The curfew will be lifted on outdoor dining May 17th and indoor dining on May 31st. Jason Perry, NTD News.
In Texas, county sheriffs are speaking up about the difficulties they have to deal with during the border crisis. The Texas Attorney General also warns Americans not to think of the crisis simply as a border issue. He says the influx of drugs and human trafficking will impact the whole country. NTD's Allison Lee has more.
The Lavaca County Sheriff wants to let people know that the border crisis doesn't just affect border counties. His county is over 200 miles north of the border. Recently, a vehicle carrying around 20 illegal immigrants crashed and caught on fire in his county, and it caused numerous injuries.
Our county is only 19,000 people, and so it depletes our resources. We had to deploy all of our EMS people, our fire departments, all of our law enforcement.
The Refugio County Sheriff is also asking the Biden administration to address the situation. He says he only has 13 deputies, and they are completely overwhelmed by the number of cases involving human smugglers and illegal immigrants.
These human smugglers go through our town going 80 miles an hour on 35-mile speed zones. I mean, this is serious stuff. They have no regards for property or human lives, at all. We have just been overwhelmed.
Holding a stack of call slips he received since January, the sheriff says his team needs to spend around 8 to 12 hours on each case. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton then highlights the negative consequences when law enforcement are overwhelmed.
Look, our Border Patrol is tied up now with transportation, logistics, and taking care of these kids and families. There's not as many resources to guard the border, which means that the cartels have greater access. They have greater access to bring their drugs in. That's why
Paxton says Texas is going to do its best to force the federal government to follow the very laws that it passed, the same laws the federal government, including President Biden, is supposed to enforce.
Tremendous harm is being done to this state. Tremendous harm is being done to this nation. The cartels are being enriched, given the opportunity to smuggle drugs, given the opportunity to human traffic, given the opportunity to charge these people exorbitant costs for getting into our state.
4 rural counties in South Texas declared states of disaster last week over the border crisis. They say the health, life, and property of their residents are under imminent threat of disaster from the human trafficking at the border with Mexico. 3 of the 4 counties are inland counties not directly bordering Mexico. Allison Lee, NTD News.
The cruise industry might be able to resume voyages in U.S. waters this July. USA Today says it obtained a letter from the U.S. National Public Health Agency, CDC, to the industry and got more details from the agency. The CDC says eliminating risk on cruises isn't possible, so the idea is to mitigate it. The agency is also clarifying how cruise companies can meet its requirements in order to sail. And in other news, in France, a group of retired generals and serving officers published an open letter warning of the coming of a civil war. This follows what they call a climate of violence that's been ramping up since last year. NTD's David Vivez has more.
20 retired French generals wrote in an open letter to President Emmanuel Macron on April 22nd that France may be heading towards a civil war. The statement was published in a conservative magazine. They urged immediate action from the government to address issues plaguing the country, the most recent of which happened last Friday, when a police officer was stabbed to death by an Islamic terrorist. They say the French political class should return to honor and duty. Antoine Martinez, one of the generals who co-signed the letter, points out the responsibility of top government officials.
After the end of the first lockdown, we saw violence erupt, some of which can be considered to be acts of war between different communities in France. We realize our government officials are to blame for that. It has been decades. They haven't had courage or discernment in some of their policies, including immigration policy.
General Christian Picmal, another co-signer, grieves on the lack of patriotism.
We are patriots, but we are considered dangerous by the government. They are calling us populists, nationalists. A true patriot loves and protects his land, the land of his father and its history.
The letter also says, quote, "This is not a time to speak. Tomorrow, a civil war will put an end to the growing chaos, and you will bear the responsibility of thousands of deaths." The letter received extensive media coverage for days. Government officials condemned it, and some are calling for sanctions against the generals and officers who signed the letter. The generals responded, saying that was not their intention, and they were just describing the process of authority intervention. But the generals found support with the general population. According to a poll released on Thursday, 6 out of 10 people in France support the general's position. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
From next year, the Wimbledon Championship says it will scrap the rest day on Sunday. Organisers hope that by spreading the matches out on to fill the additional day, more people will have the chance to watch more matches, enhancing its fan base in the UK and globally.
The Wimbledon Championship will become a 14-day tournament from next year. Matches on Middle Sunday will become a permanent part of it. The first Sunday of Wimbledon is normally a rest day. Tournament organisers use this day to get the courts back into top shape for the latter rounds, resulting in a packed Manic Monday schedule.
Thanks to improved grass court maintenance technology over the past 5 years or so and other measures, we are now confident that we will be able to look after the courts, most particularly centre court, without a full day of rest during the fortnight.
But previously, if rain had delayed play, then Middle Sunday was used for matches that were postponed. The club says Middle Sunday is also known as People's Sunday, because on some occasions in the past, tickets were made available on general sale on the day specifically for these postponed matches. This year, tickets for the championship will be sold online directly to the public for the first time. In June, around 78,000 tickets will be available. The chief executive of the club, Sally Bolton, says they are working on a minimum capacity of 25% this year and hopes it will be increased before sales and distribution are finalised. The club will also give free tickets to pandemic key workers, and some of them will be invited to the Royal Box on Centre Court.
Next up, something out of a fairy tale. Take a look at this stunning footage of Scotland's largest hedge maze. The Traquair Maze is preparing to open again as COVID-19 restrictions ease. Located near Innerleithen in the Scottish borders, gardeners carefully trim its 1,500 trees to get it ready. It was created in about 40 years ago out of cypress trees. Hardy beech trees were added later. The hedges grow so close together that only one person can pass through at a time. Over half an acre in size and with no dead ends, it's a beloved pastime for children and adults from all over the world. That's the news for today, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Stuart Lees.